Depth and complexity. Strengths make a character. I'd like to welcome everyone this evening to Crafting Compelling Characters. This is being recorded, and in about a week, you will see it in your member area. And I'm going to just allow you to ask questions, and I'll answer them as we go. But just put your questions in the chat box. Everyone will basically stay muted throughout the presentation, unless you raise your hand and you'd like, to say something. I'm happy to unmute you as well. So tonight we're going to be talking about fictional characters. And I'm really excited to share all of this information with you. It's a lot of information. There's a lot more shared in the workbook, which Ty shared the link, and hopefully everyone can open that. But it's about, I think, 45 pages with lots of links, resources, a lot of additional information. So I'm not going through the entire workbook during this training. You can take a look at that. And if you have questions, you can always reach out to me on Facebook or through email if you have specific questions about the workbook. So basically, fictional characters resonate with readers when they possess qualities, experiences, or emotions that readers can relate to, understand, or aspire to. Creating a character without depth is like baking bread without yeast. It just falls flat. I remember about a week or two ago, I was reading a book and I got to about 50 pages in and I'm like, I just can't get into this book. And partly it was because the characters were just flat. They were really kind of one-dimensional. And I just couldn't finish the book. I was like, I'm going to return it to the library and I'm done with this book. And it was partly because the characters really fell flat for me. So what is the purpose of this training tonight? It's to help you create vivid, memorable characters. So as we go along, you'll see some questions on the slide about sharing maybe some questions or some of your, like on this screen, it says share some of your favorite fictional characters and why you find them interesting or compelling. So you can just put them in the chat and I'll read through a few that you can come up with. These are characters that you found to be multidimensional, that were interesting. And the goal of tonight's presentation is to equip all of you with practical tools and techniques to craft characters that are as complex and layered as real people. I will be highlighting the significance of certain characters that readers really connect with on a personal level. And fictional characters must resonate with their readers. And when they possess qualities, experiences, or emotions that readers relate to, understand, or aspire to, that's when readers really connect with those characters, especially in a series. They want to read the next book and the next book. And I will also introduce myself. I'm Angie Dole. I've worked in the publishing industry for 6 years. I've published more than 20 mental health workbooks, and I'm a content creator, psychotherapist, certified nutrition coach, and teacher. I live in North Carolina with my 3 children and my 3 cats. And for fun, I read a lot of books, and I also enjoy practicing yoga and Pilates. So that's just a little bit about me. And again, if anybody has any questions, about me, about my process with writing and publishing, feel free to just pop them in the chat. I'm happy to answer any questions. There are some key elements to creating a truly great fictional character. So those elements are depth and complexity, authenticity, empathy and relatability, growth and development, uniqueness, conflict and struggle, including universal themes, voice and dialogue, relationships, and moral complexity. And I'm just going to go through these kind of one by one and explain and describe what is meant by all of these different topics. And I just want to check the chat really quick. Great. And I just am checking to see if there are any questions. Oh yeah, Dr. Kay Scarpetta from Patricia Cornwall's book. She is brilliant. Yes, that's a great example, Melissa. Thank you. Okay, so depth and complexity. Strengths make a character admirable and capable, while flaws make them human. So imagine a character who's brave but haunted by past mistakes. So I think you don't want a really perfect character. A combination of strengths and flaws really makes it for a strong character. Evolving traits. You want your characters to evolve over the course of the story, adapting to new challenges and undergoing personal growth. This evolution can be driven by internal conflicts, relationships, or any kind of external event. A range of emotions. It's important for your characters to demonstrate a full spectrum of emotions, as this will allow your readers to connect with the characters on a deeper level. Realism and relatability. Characters should mirror real human experiences. So you'll use relatable reactions to make characters more engaging. And next is authenticity, empathy, and relatability. Clear motivations. Your motivations for characters should be consistent and logically stem from a character's backstory and personality. For example, a character driven by fear of failure might act cautiously. Readers should be able to see why a character makes certain choices, even if they disagree with those choices. And behavior must be consistent. So characters should behave in ways that align with their established traits and motivations. Sudden shifts in behavior can break the illusion of authenticity. You want to include genuine dialogue. Dialogue should reflect the character's unique personality, background, and emotional state. Pay close attention to their word choices, speech patterns, and how they express themselves. Natural, believable dialogue enhances a character's realism and makes interactions between characters more engaging and realistic. Relatable thoughts and emotions. Let your characters show their internal struggles, doubts, hopes, and fears. Writers can create a deeper emotional connection by letting readers into the character's mind. Characters who experience struggles, dreams, and joys similar to those of the readers create a deeper connection. And authentic reactions. Characters should react to events and situations in ways that are true to their personalities and experiences. Their responses should make sense, given what readers already know about them. This may include how they handle conflict, excitement, sadness, or any unexpected challenges that come up. Universal themes. Characters who face universal themes such as love, loss, identity, and moral dilemmas are relatable because they're part of the human condition. Nearly every reader has encountered them in some form. By exploring these themes through the characters' experiences, authors can tap into their audience's shared emotional landscape, building empathy and understanding. Vulnerability is very important. When characters let down their guard and reveal their true selves, it creates an emotional bridge between them and the reader. Emotional complexity. Characters who navigate complex emotional landscapes, again, feel very authentic. So we're really working toward building that authenticity, making it seem like a real human with real emotions. Realistic flaws. Flaws make characters human and provide opportunities for growth and redemption. Whether it's a tendency to procrastinate, a fear of failure, difficulty trusting others, these imperfections resonate with readers. Think of your favorite fictional character's flaws and how they contribute to making that character memorable. If you can think of a character, type it in the chat. Let us know, of a great example of a flawed fictional character. So, up. Okay. So if you can think of any fictional characters with realistic flaws, anybody that comes to mind, just add those to the chat and I'll just continue on. Scarlett O'Hara, that's an excellent example, Amy. Thank you. That's great. Shared experiences. Characters who have experiences common or familiar to readers create a strong sense of relatability. And authentic relationships. Characters' relationships with others, whether that's friends, family members, romantic partners, enhance relatability. Authentic, well-developed relationships reflect the complexities and nuances of real-life interactions. Cultural and social context. Characters who reflect diverse cultural and social contexts can broaden readers' perspectives and enhance relatability. Authors can create a more inclusive narrative that resonates with a broader audience by including characters from different backgrounds and walks of life. And finally, moral and ethical challenges. Dilemmas force characters to make tough decisions, often reflecting the complex nature of right and wrong in the real world. Realistic, no, but Christian Grey seriously flawed. Thanks, Melissa. That's yeah, you're right. Not realistic, but definitely flawed. Okay, and Amy says end of page 4, start of page 5. Somebody might have asked where oh no, I'm sorry, the slides are not included in the workbook. The slides are pretty much just an overview of what's included in the workbook, but all of these topics and themes are in the workbook, but the slides themselves are not in the workbook itself. So sorry about that. Next time I can certainly include them. They're just not included in this workbook. Okay, and we're just continuing on with the characteristics. So next is growth and development. So characters who undergo significant personal growth or transformation are compelling. So it follows sort of the storyline or plot line, the plot arc. You want a character to exhibit that growth and development. They may overcome adversity. So characters who face and overcome adversity showcase their strength and resilience. Struggles can take many forms, whether they are battling internal demons, external obstacles, or complex relationships. Their perseverance is what makes them captivating and even more interesting to the reader. Self-discovery. Characters often undergo self-discovery, challenging existing beliefs and discovering new aspects of their identity. And then they can transform through relationships. Relationships often act as a catalyst for change, forcing characters to confront their flaws and grow. So we still have a few people entering. So anybody that's entered after the start, just so you know, the link to the workbook is in the chat, and you will have a recording of this training within about a week. Okay. And then facing moral dilemmas, characters grappling with ethical decisions and a layer of complexity to their growth. These situations force characters to weigh their values, make tough choices, and deal with the consequences. For example, a character might have to choose between loyalty to a friend and doing what is morally right. And then learning from mistakes. Characters who learn from their mistakes show realistic growth. This trial and error approach mirrors real life. So think of a character from your own work for a book that you're working on or a favorite book who experiences growth. And if you can, describe that change in one sentence. You can put your comments in the chat box. What would happen if this character didn't change at all? Would they still be likable? So I'm just looking at the chat. Let's see. Eden, Lourdes says, Eden and Amber Smith's The Way I Used to Be and The Way I Am Now books is very complex and a relatable character to people interested in the subject matter. That's a great, excellent example. Thank you, Lourdes. Let's see. I lost my audio and visual and I cannot get it back. What do I do? That's JG Enterprises. I think that's Gabriel. What you might want to do is, and I might need to put this in the chat, you'll probably want to leave Zoom and then re-enter. I'm not sure if it's your settings on your computer or laptop or phone. I'm not sure what device you're on, but you may want to just leave the training and then come back in. I'm not sure if everyone else can hear me and see my screen. That's probably an issue with Gabriel's device. And Debbie said people like flaws. That's true, because people that are flawed, I think, are more likable. I think human nature, it says, I cannot get back in. I tried that. On mine, you froze. Is everyone else hearing me and seeing the screen okay? If you could just let me know in the chat, I'd appreciate it, because I'm not sure if I'm okay. Debbie says yes, everything's good. I'm not sure if it's technical issues on my end. Cheryl says yes. Okay, fine. Voice and pick. Thanks, everyone. So Gabriel, I'm not sure. It might be a technical issue on your end. I know a lot of people are having storms, and I was just hearing thunder. I just I hope my internet stays in place. So okay, Melissa says notorious playboy becomes devoted boyfriend after many issues that teach him how to be more sensitive to his girlfriend's needs. Now, Melissa, is this a character in your own book? Because that's a great example. Okay, Lourdes says all good. Okay. All right, well, I'll kind of keep going then, and I hopefully Gabriel will catch the recording if she's not able to return to the training. I think it must be something on her end as far as her devices go. Okay, so let's see. And if anybody else has any other examples, you can just pop them in the chat and I'll continue on. Okay, so next is conflict and struggle. There are different types of conflicts that shape a character's journey, and you can use any one of these in your own writing. Obviously you're not going to use all of them, but this is a pretty comprehensive list of different characteristics that you can use. So I'm just trying to be as comprehensive as possible. And again, in the workbook, I have much more detailed outlines and descriptions of all of these different topics. I just didn't want to pack everything into the training and just kind of spout off, and sort of read through everything. But you'll see all of this in greater detail in the workbook. So internal conflicts, that's when the characters are grappling with moral dilemmas, identity crises, or personal fears that offer a real glimpse into their human psyche. Inner battles force characters to confront their deepest insecurities and desires, revealing their true selves. And this is really what makes fiction interesting, right? These internal and external conflicts. And external conflicts refer to when a character is facing something such as a formidable antagonist or societal pressures. This provides tension and urgency to the story. This really moves the story forward when there are internal and external conflicts. Interpersonal conflicts are obviously conflicts with other characters. This adds depth to the story, and so they can explore their complex relationships, any interpersonal struggles that involve misunderstandings, betrayal, competing goals. They often reveal a character's values and priorities. And again, the character becomes more likable because they're dealing with kind of real world situations that make them seem more realistic and authentic. Existential struggles. This might be a case where characters facing questions about the meaning of life, provoking deep reflection and philosophical inquiry. Struggles for justice. Characters might be fighting for justice, whether it's against an oppressive regime, a corrupt system, or a social injustice. And this, again, all of these struggles really inspire readers because they look at the character as courageous or someone with conviction, someone with values. And would anyone like to share your favorite type of conflict that you've read in a story and why you find it compelling? And I'm just going to check the chat. Okay. Lourdes says, in my own book, one of the main characters discovers she is not who she thought she was and has to change her perspective, points of view, and has to handle emotions surrounding all of this. That's a great example. So you're adding dimensions and complexity to this character, which is fantastic. And Melissa says, 50 Shades was hard for me to get through because I thought every character was totally unlikable and unrelatable. And Melissa, that's exactly why I did not finish that book. I hardly started it. As I said, I'm not a person that feels like once I start a book, I need to finish it. So because my time is valuable and there are so many books out there to read that like I said, just a week or two ago, I got to about page 50 in a book and the characters were flat and really not likable. So I just took it back to the library and I just started another book. Oh, and Amy says, I couldn't read it because of all the errors. Oh, that's interesting. So do you mean like typos, like errors in, like, did it seem unrealistic, or are you saying actual like problems with the publishing, with editing and proofreading, that kind of thing? I'm just curious. Melissa, I wanted to call my book 50 Shades of People You Give a Crap About, but I was advised against it. And Amy says, actually, the writing was horrible. Yeah, isn't it interesting how these big time books that are made into movies, and the book is actually kind of a disappointment. And I didn't watch the movies either. Like I said, that's just not the genre that I'm incredibly attracted to. I passed over. I was not really interested in reading those. Yeah, and Amy says, me neither. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. I'll just continue on and I'll keep checking the chat here. Let's see. Okay. So then next is uniqueness and distinctiveness. So it's important to give your characters some unique traits, quirks, and perspectives because it makes your character memorable. So, there are a lot of kind of avatars or sort of stock characters that people put in their books. So it's important to make your characters memorable because making them unique. So distinctive traits, unique characters often possess traits that differentiate them from others. These traits can be physical attributes such as an unusual eye color, distinctive mannerisms, or personality characteristics like an offbeat sense of humor or an unyielding sense of justice. Quirks and idiosyncrasies. Give characters a special flavor. These small details make characters more vivid and likable, also more lifelike. Whether it's a peculiar habit, an unusual hobby, or a specific way of speaking. A character who always wears mismatched socks, for example, or has an encyclopedic knowledge of obscure trivia can leave a lasting impression on readers. And again, if you're writing a series and you have these very interesting characters that carry, from book to book to book, your readers are more likely to kind of feel attached to them, to want to read more about them, because there's kind of that, they feel like they're real people in their quirkiness. You could also create unique backgrounds and uncommon perspectives. The character may come from a different culture or socioeconomic background, have a rare profession, live through extraordinary circumstances. These types of backgrounds shape their worldview and add layers to their interactions and the decisions within the story. These can be used to challenge readers' assumptions. Complex motivations. So instead of standard goals like seeking revenge or achieving power, unique characters might be motivated by more abstract concepts, such as a quest for knowledge, an obsession with symmetry, or a drive to create a perfect work of art. So it could be something very unusual. And really, the sky's the limit. Use your imagination. You can come up with some really powerful, compelling characters, just giving them some, again, realistic, but really compelling attributes. And finally, contradictory traits. For example, a fearless warrior may be terrified of spiders, or a genius scientist may have a knack for practical jokes. Contradictions make characters more human and multifaceted, as real people often possess conflicting qualities. Okay, let me just check the chat real quick. Amy says the author of The Hunger Games was not going to make it a series, but people loved it so much that she made 2 more books. Oh, I didn't realize that. That's interesting. Yeah, that's another really, really popular series with some really interesting, unique characters. Okay. So these are some of the commonly explored themes in fiction. These themes often transcend cultural, geographical, and temporal boundaries. So these are all sort of themes that many humans can sort of relate to, like the pursuit of happiness, a fundamental human endeavor, making characters' journeys toward joy and contentment relatable and inspiring. The power of love, whether it's romantic love, family bonds, or deep friendships, characters' experiences with love often evoke strong emotions. Obviously, the romance genre is popular as it is. The power of love and that kind of romantic kind of idea of true love is extremely attractive and very popular. Facing mortality. This theme forces characters to confront their fears, reassess their priorities, and find meaning in their existence. The struggle for freedom. The desire for freedom, whether from oppression, societal constraints, or personal limitations, is a powerful theme. And all of these themes, you can kind of apply them to your storyline, and it's just, again, using your imagination. How can you insert some of these themes into your work of fiction, and how are your characters affected by these different themes? The journey of self-discovery. This explores identity, personal growth. Characters often confront their past, embrace their true selves, and redefine their paths in life. The conflict between good and evil. That's a pretty, well-known one. Characters explore moral choices, the nature of humanity, and the consequences of their actions. And overcoming adversity. They struggle against difficult circumstances, and their eventual triumphs inspire readers. So again, these are just really, really kind of common themes, and they may seem sort of cliche, or, but you can always put a twist into any of these themes, or you can combine themes. So really, again, it's just sort of your imagination. The sky's the limit in terms of what you can achieve with this. The need for redemption. Characters seeking redemption for past mistakes or misdeeds embody the theme of atonement and forgiveness. The search for truth, where characters are driven by uncovering secrets, solving mysteries, or seeking enlightenment. That really resonates with readers who value knowledge and understanding. This theme can also really explore the pursuit of honesty, the complexities of perception, and the impact of truth. The experience of isolation and loneliness. Characters deal with the emotional and psychological effects of disconnecting from others and that journey toward reconnection and community. The drive for achievement. Characters' dedication, sacrifice, and ultimate achievement provide a blueprint for ambition and perseverance. The importance of forgiveness. This process and its impact on healing and reconciliation often offer potent narratives that resonate with readers seeking closure and peace in their own lives. So oftentimes readers want to escape into a good work of fiction, but when the themes of the book really, when they resonate with or relate to some of those themes, it makes them want to come back for more. They really fall in love with the author, they fall in love with the series, they want to reconnect when they resonate with the different themes in a novel. The search for justice. Characters striving to right wrongs and uphold moral integrity highlight society's ongoing struggle for justice. Okay, and I'm just going to check the chat again. Shelley said, I write paranormal romance. There's a lot of power of love and struggle of secrecy and good and evil. Yep, that's a great example. Thank you, Shelley, for sharing that. That's excellent. So next is relationships and character development. And of course, this is a hugely important piece as you're developing your characters. Relationships are really oftentimes the center of a fiction novel. So obviously these are pretty obvious, but you can use your imagination and develop these in new and different, unique ways. So characters who share strong friendships demonstrate the power of connection and companionship. These relationships provide comfort and strength, offering a safe space for characters to express themselves and cope with struggles. Friendships add warmth and relatability to the narrative as readers reflect on their own friendships and the impact on their lives. Romantic dynamics explore themes of love, vulnerability, betrayal, intimacy, passion, and commitment, bringing out the best and the worst in your characters. Family bonds, whether it's the complex bond between parents and children, siblings, or extended family, these relationships shape characters' identities and values. Stories can explore family dynamics, and they may include themes of legacy, duty, acceptance, and reconciliation, and more. I mean, oftentimes, there's major family sagas where it's generation to generation, and it's all kinds of extended family are described in a single novel. Rivalries introduce an element of competition and tension, driving the plot forward and adding stakes to the narrative. Characters engaged in rivalries can push each other to their limits. They reveal strengths and weaknesses. These relationships often explore themes of ambition, jealousy, pride, redemption. The intensity of rivalries can create gripping storylines. You don't want to go maybe too overboard with rivalries, but a flavor of rivalry in a book can make it really interesting and very, very compelling for the reader. Okay, and mentorships. These relationships highlight themes of guidance, growth, learning, legacy, and the transfer of knowledge. Partnerships and conflictual relationships. Partnerships explore the balance of power, trust, and mutual goals in business, crime, or other ventures. Characters must navigate shared responsibilities and conflicts of interest. These relationships can reveal negotiation skills, ethical boundaries, loyalty, and so many other dynamics. The dynamics of partnerships often test the character's integrity and adaptability. Conflicted relationships are marked by internal conflict and ambivalence. Those offer a rich emotional territory in a novel. Characters, for example, who love yet resent each other, or who feel torn between conflicting loyalties, provide a nuanced view of human emotion. These relationships often reflect real-life complexities and the push and pull of feelings. Cross-cultural relationships bridge cultural, social, or ideological divides, and they introduce themes of diversity, acceptance, and understanding. These relationships can break down stereotypes, highlight commonalities, and celebrate differences. Healing relationships occur when characters support each other through difficult times. They mend emotional wounds, demonstrate therapeutic power of human connection. Adversarial relationships, where characters are antagonistic toward each other, create conflict and tension. These relationships can drive the plot as characters engage in a battle of wit, strategy, or outright hostility. The evolution of adversarial relationships, whether they resolve into understanding or escalate into greater conflict, keeps readers engaged and invested in the outcomes. And then finally, transformative relationships catalyze personal growth and change, whether it's through a challenging friendship, a life-changing romantic relationship, or a profound family connection. Did anyone have any questions about relationships and character development? We'll just move on to the next topic. And again, just put any of your questions in the chat. I can always come back to them. Okay, so next we are going to discuss voice and dialogue. A unique and engaging voice, along with distinctive dialogue, brings characters to life. The character's voice, it's that unique voice reflects their personality, their background, and their worldview. It's conveyed through their thoughts, the narrative style that you use, and an internal monologue. A well-crafted voice can instantly differentiate one character from another and provide insights into their inner life. And it is really worth spending time on developing voice and dialogue with your protagonist, your main character, as well as secondary characters. You could use dialect and accent. So incorporating dialects and accents can add authenticity and richness to a character's dialogue. When used thoughtfully, linguistic nuances can reflect a character's cultural background, regional origin, or social class. Dialects and accents should be used sparingly and accurately, though, to avoid stereotypes. You don't want to fall into kind of a stereotypical character, but if you use it in the right way, it can really add a richness to that character. Speech patterns and tics. So every character's way of speaking is influenced by their education, experiences, and personality. Some characters might use long, flowing sentences filled with descriptive and flowery language, while others might prefer short, clipped speech. Speech patterns reveal a lot about a character's temperament, intelligence, and emotional state. They may use catchphrases or repeat phrases, so linguistic quirks can serve as a signature trait, providing consistency in how a character is perceived, whether it's a humorous tagline, a habitual exclamation, or a comforting phrase. These elements contribute to a character's identity. You can also use subtext, or the underlying meaning behind a character's words adds a lot of depth. Characters might say one thing while meaning something entirely different. So using subtext can reveal hidden motivations, emotions, or conflicts. Dialogue can also reflect the type of relationship your character is in. So whether they're formal or informal with their language, if they use nicknames or titles with other characters, and the level of openness or guardedness in conversations all provide clues about the character's connections. Emotional resonance. Dialogue that captures the character's emotional state enhances their believability and relatability. Whether it's the nervous stammering of a shy character, the passionate outburst of someone that's in love, or the measured tone of a character that's in tight control, the emotional undertones help readers connect with and understand the characters better. You might use character-specific vocabulary. So the vocabulary can reflect interests, professions, or personalities. For example, a chef might use culinary terms, while an adventurer might use language related to exploration or adventure or discovery. You can also use dialogue as a plot device. Dialogue can reveal key information, advance the storyline, or create suspense. Characters might drop hints about future events, share crucial backstory elements, or engage in conversations that lead to pivotal decisions. Whether through clever banter, dry sarcasm, or lighthearted jokes, humorous dialogue can reveal a character's intelligence, perspective, and ability to cope with challenges. And finally, authentic reactions. Characters' reactions should be true to their established personality and circumstances. Whether they express surprise, anger, disappointment, or sadness, their responses should feel natural and consistent. And as I said, if anybody has any questions about any of these topics, just feel free to add it to the chat. And again, the workbook link is in the chat as well. The recording will be in your group within a week after it's edited, and the link to the workbook will also be in your group. Okay, so next is moral complexity. Characters who navigate morally gray areas, face ethical dilemmas, or challenge societal norms are particularly compelling because they provoke thought and reflection in the reader. They do this through several different ways. Ethical dilemmas, where characters are forced to make tough choices between conflicting values or interests, often lacking clear right or wrong answers. Moral ambiguity, where characters are operating in morally gray areas. They challenge black and white perceptions of right and wrong. They might commit questionable acts for noble reasons or adhere to a strict moral code in a very flawed system. Internal conflicts are when characters experience intense internal battles stemming from guilt, shame, or uncertainty about the consequences of their actions. Characters might wrestle with their conscience. They may struggle to reconcile their actions with their sense of self. Challenging societal norms, whether they are rebels fighting against oppressive regimes, activists advocating for social change, or individuals rejecting cultural expectations, these characters typically question the status quo. Moral growth and transformation. Your character may start with flawed or selfish motivations, but evolve through their experiences, ultimately embracing more ethical or an altruistic path. Complex antagonists. Antagonists with moral complexity add a richness to your story, moving beyond the typical villain archetype. Characters might have understandable motivations, tragic backstories, or sympathetic traits that blur the line between hero and villain. By presenting antagonists with moral depth, you can create more nuanced conflicts and challenge readers to empathize with multiple perspectives. Moral relativism. Characters who believe that right and wrong depend on context rather than absolute standards invite readers to question their own moral frameworks. And exploring consequences. Consequences can be personal, such as emotional turmoil and damaged relationships, or external, like legal repercussions or societal backlash. Characters might perform heroic deeds while harboring dark secrets or exhibit kindness despite a troubled past. So that is showing the duality of human nature. Characters might ponder questions of justice, virtue, or the nature of good and evil through dialogue or internal monologue. And then finally, cultural and historical context. Characters confront moral issues shaped by their environment, such as wartime ethics, cultural taboos, or ways that basically defy typical moral judgments. Next, we're going to talk about the different types of characters in a novel. Let me just open up. Can any of your previous sections be done in a way to vary the pace of the story? So Marlene asked, can any of your previous sections be done in a way to vary the pace of the story? Marlene, can you clarify that a little bit? I'm not sure. Do you mean, I'm not exactly sure. Do you mean like in a book series or in different chapters? I'm not exactly, if you could clarify, that would be awesome. And I'll try to answer your question. Okay, so in fiction, characters are typically categorized based on their roles and functions within the narrative. The three main types of characters are protagonists, antagonists, and secondary characters, and they all serve different purposes in driving the plot and developing the story's themes. So the protagonist is the main character around whom the story revolves, often the character with whom the audience is meant to empathize and whose goals, desires, and challenges form the narrative's core. The protagonist's journey, struggles, and growth are central to the story. Their actions and decisions often drive the plot forward. Protagonists typically have clear goals or desires they pursue throughout the story, such as solving a mystery. So examples of protagonists include Harry Potter, Elizabeth Bennet, and Frodo Baggins. So those are all very, popular protagonists that are in books as well as movies. They oftentimes overcome obstacles, they achieve a personal dream. They usually experience significant development or change, often learning important lessons or gaining new perspectives. The story is often told from the protagonist's point of view, whether directly through first-person narration or indirectly through third-person limited perspective. So taking the time to really build your protagonist, to really flesh out what that character, who that character is, what they're going to be doing, what their goals and desires are. In your workbook, there is a pretty lengthy worksheet where you can, it's for character development. And I've included several websites as well where you can work through all of these details. But spending time on getting to know your character so that that character is really part of you or like a family member. where you've really, really fleshed out the details so you know them through and through. And can you all give me in the chat some examples of some of your favorite protagonists? You can just type them in the chat box. I'm sure you can come up with. Okay, so Marlene came back with whether within the dialogue or use of ethical dilemma. Not sure I'm asking the question correctly. So let's see. I mean, I think, Marlene, you can use any of these elements together as long as your plot flows and as long as it makes sense and you're consistent. I think that's, and really a good editor, and 2 weeks ago in the training that I taught, I talked about the importance of a good editor that can really work through your story to make sure that it flows and it makes sense. But you could use any of these mixing kind of mixing and matching any of these different elements to really create something very, very unique. So you could use an ethical dilemma, and you could switch that up. So you're saying previous sections, and I'm just wondering, to vary the pace of the story. Certainly, you could use any of these elements to either speed the story up. You could, and we're going to talk about backstory in just a few minutes, but there are certainly ways that you can use it that will make it flow. I mean, I've read some novels where the writer jumps from one theme to another theme to, one character to it, and it gets very confusing, but the way the novel is kind of pulled together, it all flows well. So let me see. Number 4 in Divergent, Debbie, that's great. Lourdes said Alex Cross. Yep, that's a great one. Marlene said thanks. And if you have any other questions, if I wasn't really clear about that, just type in another question. But again, I think good editors can really and Sydney asks, can a secondary character take the antagonist role? Absolutely. I think some of these characters can kind of switch out. I've read books where the protagonist is not really the main storyteller. Sometimes it switches to the antagonist or it switches to a secondary character. I really think the most important piece of it is that the narrative flows and it makes sense and it's consistent. So on to the antagonist is a character or force that opposes the protagonist, creating conflict and tension in the story. They will create obstacles that the protagonist must overcome, and this conflict is often central to the plot. So while the protagonist has a goal, the antagonist may be opposing those goals or motives or desires that create friction. And an antagonist does not have to be a human character. It could be a force. It could be anything that is antagonistic to the protagonist's goals. Let's see. So antagonists can be fully realized characters with their own backstories, motivations, and character arcs. So you could have an antagonist that is really kind of a main character with its own character arc. They're not always, good, bad or evil. They may simply have different perspectives or values. So an antagonist isn't always the bad guy. An antagonist may just have opposing viewpoints, opposing goals to the protagonist. And again, if you could give me some examples of antagonists that you can think from fiction, that would be awesome. And I included a couple of examples here: Darth Vader, Mr. Darcy, Lord Voldemort. There are several, I'm sure you can think of many examples in fiction that are really, really well known. Let's see. Okay. Finally, secondary characters, they are the supporting characters. They typically play a smaller but significant role in the story. They're not usually the primary focus, but they do help enrich the narrative and support the main characters. They often support the protagonist or antagonist, offering advice, companionship, or even opposition. They can be friends, mentors, sidekicks, love interests, or rivals. They contribute to the story's world building, adding depth and complexity to the setting and culture. Their interactions with the main characters can help reveal more about the story's world and societal norms. They also advance the plot by providing essential information, introducing subplots, or acting as catalysts for the protagonist or antagonist actions. While they may not undergo significant change themselves, secondary characters can influence the development of the protagonist or antagonist, often serving as foils or mirrors that highlight certain traits. So, and again, in the chat, if you could give me some examples of some great secondary characters. I've included, actually I didn't include, but Ron Weasley in Harry Potter, he's also a secondary protagonist. So if you can think of some others, you can just add them to the chat. In my own novel that I'm currently working on, My protagonist is a psychologist turned bookstore owner, and there are, I guess, antagonists would be the people in this story that are hiding clues around the small town that she lives in, and kind of doing some destructive activities, doing, those are the antagonists. They're, as far as my novel goes, they're kind of unknown at this point. So she's not really clear who the antagonists are. She just knows that they're kind of wreaking havoc in the small town that she lives in. The secondary characters that support her are a young girl that helps her in the bookstore, are the book club members that visit the bookstore, the cafe owner next door that brings her coffee. So those would be secondary characters that add a richness to the storyline, while my protagonist, my main character is she's a bookstore owner who used to be a psychologist. She's meeting a love interest, and so it's kind of like, in my own mind, okay, how can I flesh out these characters? How can my secondary characters become more interesting, so they're not just kind of flat one-dimensional characters that are just filler? So a really, really rich novel will build up all of these characters so they all work together and they all sort of have backstories, and they're interesting, even though, again, a secondary character, it would be easy to kind of resort to that one-dimensional, without much backstory or many features. But I'm a true believer in really building up those characters to make them even more interesting, and make the story itself just far more interesting. Sounds like something I would want to read. It's probably going to be a while, Amy. I'm a nonfiction writer. All of my published books are in the mental health field, and they're nonfiction. They're very clinical, written for professionals in the mental health field. But my dream has always been to write a mystery novel. And when I was in second grade, I had a little yellow notebook, and I wrote my first novel in pencil. I wish I still had that book, but I've always dreamed of writing fiction, and I know a lot about how to construct a novel, and I've just recently started actually working on a novel, and hopefully eventually I'll publish it, and going, with all of Ty's amazing courses. I've learned so much, and I'm kind of, I know about self-publishing in terms of nonfiction and all the steps to take, but there's so many kind of nuances to the process. So but again, like character development alone, we're doing a whole training on just developing characters, because it's so incredibly important to really, and for me, I just really want to produce a really quality novel that people do want to read. I think that's everyone's goal, right?